The guns of the First World War fell silent in late 1918, but the echoes of devastation lingered across Europe. Germany, once confident and proud, collapsed under the crushing weight of exhaustion, starvation, and internal chaos. Soldiers returning from the Western Front did not march home as victors. They came back broken, traumatized, and haunted by memories of mud, gas, and unending death in the trenches of the Somme and Verdun. Berlin was a city in turmoil. The monarchy disintegrated, and Kaiser Wilhelm II fled into exile. A fragile republic, the Weimar Republic, was proclaimed amid riots, strikes, and street battles. It was a democracy without roots, born into distrust and resentment. Many Germans felt as though ruin had been thrust upon them by incompetent politicians and revolutionaries. The Treaty of Versailles in 1919 deepened the national wound. Germany was forced to disarm, surrender territories, and pay enormous reparations. The treaty's punitive terms humiliated the nation, fueling a sense of injustice and betrayal. Within Germany, a poisonous myth began to spread that the army had not been defeated on the battlefield, but had been stabbed in the back by traitors at home. Though false, the myth would soon become a powerful weapon in the hands of extremists. Then came 1923. Currency spiraled into madness. Inflation soared so high that a loaf of bread could cost billions of marks. People carried banknotes by the wheelbarrow. Savings evaporated overnight, and middle-class families plunged into poverty. Shops closed, factories shut down. Hunger stalked the working class. Political violence filled the streets as communists and right-wing militias fought for dominance. The young Weimar Republic struggled to maintain order, its authority challenged at every turn. It was a fragile vessel drifting in a storm of anger, fear, and despair. And at the edge of this storm stood a man whose voice would soon captivate millions. A failed artist from Austria, a bitter veteran with fiery rhetoric and limitless ambition. His name was Adolf Hitler, and from the ruins of a broken nation, his path to power had just begun. In the aftermath of the war, Adolf Hitler found himself in Munich, drifting aimlessly and consumed by resentment. He had no wealth, no formal education beyond secondary school, and no clear direction. What he did possess, however, was a burning sense of mission and an uncanny gift for oratory. He joined a small political group called the German Workers' Party, a marginal movement with only a handful of members. But it did not take long for Hitler to overshadow the party with his fiery speeches. His voice rose and fell with dramatic precision, weaving anger, hope, and hatred into a single compelling narrative. Crowds that gathered out of curiosity soon stayed out of fascination. Hitler told them Germany had been betrayed. He insisted democracy was weak. He blamed the Jews, the communists, and the political leaders of Weimar for every hardship. For a population drowning in fear and uncertainty, these lies sounded like truth. Hitler quickly transformed the tiny party. He renamed it the National Socialist German Workers' Party, the Nazi Party, and gave it a striking symbol, the swastika, displayed on a bold red flag. The flag became a visual anchor for a movement built on emotional manipulation and radical nationalism. In 1923, intoxicated by a growing sense of power, Hitler attempted to overthrow the Bavarian government in the beer hall putsch. The coup failed disastrously. 16 Nazis were killed. Hitler was arrested and charged with treason. Yet the trial turned him into a national figure. His testimony, filled with theatrical defiance and patriotic posturing, was broadcast across Germany. Many who had never heard his name now saw him as a passionate nationalist wronged by the state. Sentenced to a lenient prison term, Hitler used his time in Landsberg prison to dictate a book, Mein Kampf, a rambling manifesto outlining his racial ideology, hatred of Jews, contempt for democracy, and vision of territorial expansion eastward. Few took the book seriously at the time, but it would later become the blueprint for catastrophe. Upon his release, Hitler resolved to seize power not through rebellion, but through the legal machinery of the republic he despised. The path would be slow, but it would also be far more effective. The world had not yet realized the danger. The global economic crash of 1929 struck Germany with unparalleled force. The nation, heavily dependent on American loans and still burdened by reparations, plunged almost instantly into a new abyss. Banks collapsed, factories closed, streets filled with the unemployed and homeless. Long lines snaked outside soup kitchens in Berlin, Hamburg, and every major city. Desperation spread like wildfire. The Nazis seized their moment. While Weimar politicians argued endlessly, Hitler delivered simple, powerful messages. He promised jobs, unity, strength, and restored pride. He blamed the Jews for controlling finance, blamed the communists for stirring chaos, and blamed the Republic for humiliating Germany. His paramilitary wing, the brown-shirted SA, marched through the streets in disciplined formations, projecting an image of order that contrasted sharply with the failing government. Through propaganda, violence, and political maneuvering, the Nazi Party grew at an astonishing pace. In 1930, they became the second-largest party in the Reichstag. In the elections of 1932, they became the largest. Despite lacking a majority, the Nazis proved impossible to ignore. Conservative elites, fearing communism more than they feared Hitler, believed they could tame him, use his popularity to stabilize the country, and then sideline him. Their arrogance would open the gates to dictatorship. On January 30th, 1933, the aging president Paul von Hindenburg appointed Adolf Hitler as Chancellor of Germany. What many believed was a temporary compromise became the turning point in modern history. Within months, Hitler would dismantle the Republic from within and establish a totalitarian regime built on terror, propaganda, and absolute loyalty. The dark era of the Third Reich was about to begin. Barely a month after Hitler became Chancellor, a single night changed the course of German history. On February 27, 1933, flames engulfed the Reichstag building, the very seat of German democracy. The fire lit up the night sky of Berlin, illuminating crowds of onlookers and soldiers as smoke curled into the winter air. Nazi leaders rushed to the scene, exploiting the chaos with alarming speed. A young Dutch communist was arrested inside the building, but whether he acted alone or at all remains fiercely debated by historians. What mattered to Hitler was not the truth, but the opportunity. Within hours, he declared the fire a communist conspiracy aimed at overthrowing the government. He demanded emergency powers to protect the nation. President Hindenburg, old and frail, signed the Reichstag fire decree the next morning. With one signature, Germany changed forever. Civil liberties were suspended. Freedom of speech vanished overnight. Newspapers were censored. Political opponents could be arrested without trial. Thousands of communists, social democrats, and critics of the regime were dragged away by police or beaten by Nazi paramilitaries. Fear spread quickly. Silence followed. Only weeks later, Hitler pushed through the Enabling Act, a law granting him the authority to pass legislation without the Reichstag's approval. Surrounded by Nazi stormtroopers, intimidated legislators voted under pressure. The act passed. Democracy died in its birthplace. In only 57 days, Hitler transformed a fragile republic into a dictatorship. The door to absolute power was wide open, and he was ready to walk through it. Once in control, Hitler moved swiftly to reshape Germany into a one-party state where dissent could not survive. The process was called Gleichschaltung, coordination, but it meant something far darker: the forced alignment of every institution, every organization, every aspect of life with Nazi ideology. State governments were dissolved and replaced with loyal Nazis. Trade unions were abolished, their leaders imprisoned. All political parties except the Nazi Party were banned. Germany was no longer a nation of competing voices. It became a monolithic chorus singing a single tune. But the real instruments of terror were the SS and the Gestapo. The SS, led by Heinrich Himmler, evolved from a small guard unit into an elite order sworn personally to Hitler. They were the regime's most loyal enforcers, cold, disciplined, and utterly ruthless. The Gestapo, the secret police, operated without judicial oversight. Suspected enemies of the state were arrested, interrogated, or made to disappear without explanation. Ordinary Germans lived with a constant sense of unease. A careless remark in a cafe, a joke about Hitler, a complaint overheard by a neighbor, any of these could bring the knock at the door. Yet terror alone did not hold the nation. Propaganda molded the people's minds with equal force. Joseph Goebbels, Minister of Propaganda, controlled newspapers, radio, film, and art. He crafted the myth of Hitler as a heroic, almost divine leader destined to restore Germany to greatness. Radios were made cheap so every household could hear the Führer's voice. Posters, youth organizations, parades, and mass rallies created a world where Nazi symbolism became inseparable from daily life. The combination of fear and devotion produced a society where resistance grew nearly impossible. By 1934, Hitler's power was absolute, but he wanted more. The army still held influence, and the paramilitary SA posed a potential challenge to his authority. The solution would come in the form of a purge, drenched in blood. By mid-1934, a dangerous rivalry stirred within the Nazi movement. Ernst Röhm, the head of the SA, commanded millions of stormtroopers, far outnumbering the German army. Röhm believed the SA should replace the army entirely. His ambitions alarmed military commanders and unsettled conservative elites who had assisted Hitler's rise. Hitler knew he needed the loyalty of the army to carry out his future plans. The SA, once useful, had become a liability. On the night of June 30th, 1934, Hitler struck. He flew to Munich personally, leading SS units in a series of coordinated raids. Röhm and the top SA leadership were arrested. Many were shot on the spot. Others were dragged away for execution. The violence spread beyond the SA. Conservative critics, rival politicians, and even some early Nazi supporters found themselves on secret hit lists. For 3 days, Germany trembled. When the bloodshed ended, dozens had been murdered, perhaps many more. Hitler addressed the nation with cold justification, claiming he had acted to save the German people. The army, relieved to see Rome gone, swore loyalty to Hitler personally. The SS emerged as the dominant force of terror. The German public, shocked yet fearful, accepted the purge. A month later, President Hindenburg died. Hitler merged the office of Chancellor and President, adopting a new title, Führer. Germany now belonged to him completely. With absolute power secured, Hitler turned to reshaping German society into the world he had envisioned for years. The Third Reich promised rebirth, strength, and unity, and at first, many Germans saw exactly that. Economic revival became the showpiece of Nazi success. Massive public works projects were launched, most famously the Autobahn system. New factories opened, producing armaments disguised as civilian goods. Unemployment, once a national plague, fell dramatically. Behind the numbers, however, lay a darker truth. The economic miracle was an illusion. Jobs came largely from rearmament and militarization, activities forbidden by the Treaty of Versailles. Government debt exploded. The Nazis suppressed labor rights, fixing wages while lengthening work hours. And Jews, political dissidents, and so-called undesirables were removed from the workforce, artificially lowering unemployment. Yet for ordinary Germans, life seemed to improve. Vacations through the Strength Through Joy program, cheap radios, and renewed national pride fostered the belief that the country was rising again. But beneath the surface, Germany was transforming into something monstrous. Step by step, Jews were excluded from public life. Laws restricted their professions. Anti-Jewish propaganda filled newspapers and school books. Children in the Hitler Youth learned racial theories depicting Germans as the master race. The state reached into every corner of life, reshaping culture, education, and family values. Churches were pressured to align with Nazi ideology. Artists were censored or exiled. Books deemed un-German were burned in public bonfires. Germany looked reborn, but the rebirth was built on hatred, exclusion, and deception. And soon, the regime would reveal the full scale of its ambitions. By 1935, Hitler felt confident enough to cast aside the restraints of Versailles openly. He reintroduced conscription and expanded the Army, Navy, and Air Force. European leaders protested, but their objections were weak, still haunted by the memories of the last war and eager to avoid another. In 1936, Hitler took a calculated gamble. He ordered German troops into the Rhineland, a demilitarized buffer zone established by Versailles. Military advisors were nervous. If France resisted, the small German force would have to retreat. But France did nothing. Britain did nothing. Europe blinked. The success emboldened Hitler. Foreign policy became a string of daring moves. He strengthened ties with Italy's Mussolini. He supported Franco's forces in the Spanish Civil War, using the conflict to test the Luftwaffe's new aircraft. He withdrew Germany from international agreements. Meanwhile, Nazi propaganda portrayed every gain as the restoration of Germany's rightful place in the world. Crowds cheered as Hitler spoke of unity and national destiny. In 1938, Hitler moved to annex Austria in the Anschluss. German troops entered the country without resistance. Many Austrians welcomed them. The Reich grew in size and confidence. Next came Czechoslovakia. Hitler demanded the Sudetenland, a region with ethnic Germans. At the Munich conference, Britain and France, desperate for peace, agreed to Hitler's demands, believing they had averted war. But the promise of peace was an illusion. By early 1939, Hitler seized the rest of Czechoslovakia, revealing his true intentions. He was not seeking justice for ethnic Germans. He was pursuing expansion without limits. Europe stood on the brink. Only one nation remained directly in the path of Hitler's next move: Poland. Throughout the summer of 1939, tension spread across Europe like a tightening wire. Hitler demanded territory from Poland, insisting the Danzig corridor must return to Germany. The Poles refused. Britain and France pledged to defend Polish independence. But Hitler believed they were bluffing. To ensure the Soviet Union would not interfere with his plans, Hitler signed a shocking pact with Joseph Stalin, the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact. Publicly, it promised non-aggression. Secretly, it divided Eastern Europe into spheres of influence, giving Hitler freedom to attack Poland. At dawn on September 1, 1939, German forces crossed the Polish border. Tanks surged forward. Stuka dive bombers screamed down from the sky. Within hours, Poland was engulfed in destruction. 2 days later, Britain and France declared war. The Second World War had begun. The Wehrmacht moved with terrifying speed. Poland fell in just weeks, split between Germany and the Soviet Union. The world looked on in shock as Hitler celebrated yet another victory. In the months that followed, Germany continued its march. Denmark, Norway, the Low Countries, and France collapsed under the relentless blitzkrieg. In just a year, Hitler controlled most of Western Europe. Only Britain remained defiant. Only Britain stood in his way. But Hitler's ambitions no longer stopped at Europe's western shores. His gaze turned eastward, toward vast lands, countless lives, and a war of unimaginable brutality. The darkest chapters of the Third Reich were yet to come. By the summer of 1940, Hitler stood at the height of his power. France had fallen in a mere 6 weeks. The Low Countries had been crushed. Denmark and Norway were under German occupation. On maps across Europe, the swastika stretched farther than even the Kaiser had imagined. Only Britain remained unconquered. Hitler hoped the British government would seek peace after losing France, but Churchill refused. "We shall never surrender," he declared, and Britain prepared for its darkest hour. Hitler launched Operation Sea Lion, a planned invasion of the British Isles. But before German troops could land, the Luftwaffe had to destroy the Royal Air Force. The stage was set for the first major air battle in history. In July 1940, German aircraft roared across the English Channel. Waves of bombers and fighters attacked British airfields, radar stations, and cities. The Luftwaffe outnumbered the RAF and expected an easy victory. But Britain fought back with determination and innovation. Radar technology detected incoming raids. Fighter pilots, many barely out of their teens, scrambled into the sky day after day, pushing their limits to defend their homeland. Churchill called them the few, whose bravery would change the fate of Europe. As summer turned to autumn, Hitler grew impatient. Instead of focusing on RAF airfields, the Luftwaffe shifted to bombing London and other cities in a campaign known as the Blitz. Night after night, sirens wailed as families huddled in shelters while bombs rained down. But the British spirit hardened instead of breaking. By October, German losses mounted. The RAF had survived. The invasion was postponed indefinitely. For the first time, Hitler had been defeated. Britain stood firm, providing the Allies with a vital foothold for the future. Yet Hitler's failed invasion did not diminish his ambition. His eyes were now fixed on the East, where he intended to wage the war he had dreamed of for decades. A war of annihilation. On June 22, 1941, without warning, Germany launched the largest invasion in human history, Operation Barbarossa. More than 3 million German soldiers, supported by allies and vast numbers of tanks, aircraft, and artillery, surged across the Soviet border. Hitler believed the Soviet Union would collapse in weeks. He believed Slavs were inferior, unfit for resistance. He believed the Red Army was weak, poorly led, and disorganized. He underestimated them all. In the early months, German forces advanced at breathtaking speed. Entire Soviet armies were encircled and destroyed. Cities like Minsk, Smolensk, and Kiev fell. Hundreds of thousands of Soviet soldiers were killed or captured. German propaganda proclaimed the war nearly won. But the victory Hitler sought remained elusive. The Soviet Union was vast beyond German expectation. Endless plains, thick forests, treacherous roads, and a population hardened by hardship. Railways were incompatible with German trains. Supplies ran short. Vehicles broke down. Soldiers marched hundreds of miles through dust, mud, and heat. And then came winter. German troops, expecting a short campaign, lacked winter gear. Temperatures plunged below freezing. Guns jammed. Engines froze. Frostbite ravaged entire battalions. Soviet forces, reinforced and regrouped, counterattacked fiercely near Moscow. For the first time since the war began, German forces were halted. But the brutality of Barbarossa extended far beyond the battlefield. The war in the East was ideological, a war of extermination. Behind the front lines, special SS units known as Einsatzgruppen carried out mass shootings of Jews, political commissars, and civilians. Entire villages were wiped out. The seeds of the Holocaust were being planted in blood-soaked fields. Barbarossa, intended to be Hitler's ultimate triumph, became the beginning of his downfall. The Eastern Front would consume the German war machine, draining its strength, devouring its soldiers, and turning the war into a battle Germany could never win. Long before the war, Hitler's hateful ideology had identified Jews as the ultimate enemy of Germany. But with the invasion of the Soviet Union, Nazi policy escalated from persecution to systematic murder. The Holocaust began not in gas chambers, but in forests, ravines, and open fields. Einsatzgruppen mass shootings claimed hundreds of thousands of lives. Men, women, and children executed in pits they were forced to dig themselves. Cities like Kyiv witnessed horrors such as Babi Yar, where tens of thousands were murdered in just 2 days. Yet the killing methods were slow, inefficient, and psychologically taxing for the perpetrators. Nazi officials sought a solution that was more industrial, more systematic, and more detached. In 1942, at the Wannsee Conference, high-ranking Nazi leaders formalized what they called the final solution to the Jewish question, the plan to exterminate every Jew in Europe. Death camps were built in occupied Poland, engineered for murder on an unimaginable scale. Auschwitz-Birkenau, Treblinka, Sobibor, Belzec, Kelmlau, Majdanek. Trains packed with Jewish families arrived day after day. Upon disembarking, most were sent directly to gas chambers disguised as showers. Within minutes, thousands would be dead. Their bodies were burned in crematoria, their belongings sorted, their hair shaved, their identities erased. Millions perished: Jews, Roma, the disabled, political prisoners, and others deemed unworthy of life. The Holocaust was not a side effect of war. It was a central objective of the Nazi regime, an atrocity executed with cold efficiency, bureaucratic precision, and horrifying moral corruption. As the killings escalated, the war expanded on every front. Germany's resources stretched thin, yet Hitler pressed on, blinded by ideology and convinced of victory, despite growing signs of collapse. The turning point was approaching, born from the frozen streets of a Soviet city that bore the name of Hitler's greatest enemy. In 1942, Hitler launched a new offensive into the Soviet Union, aiming to capture the oil-rich Caucasus and the city that bore his rival's name, Stalingrad. The battle that followed would become one of the bloodiest in human history. At first, German forces advanced steadily. By late summer, they reached Stalingrad's outskirts. The city was a maze of factories, rubble, and shattered buildings stretching along the Volga River. Hitler demanded its capture at all costs, not for strategic necessity, but for prestige. Taking Stalingrad would be a symbolic blow to Stalin himself. The battle became a gruesome struggle for every street, every staircase, every room. Snipers hunted from broken windows. Machine guns rattled across factories. Bodies froze where they fell. Civilians starved in basements turned to tombs. German soldiers, exhausted and undersupplied, faced fierce Soviet defenders who clung to every scrap of ground. The Red Army brought reinforcements across the river under relentless bombardment. Then, in November 1942, the Soviet Union launched a massive counteroffensive, Operation Uranus. In a sweeping pincer movement, Soviet armies encircled the entire German Sixth Army inside the city. Hitler ordered them to hold their positions. No retreat, no surrender. Winter closed in. Food ran out. Ammunition dwindled. The airlift Hitler promised failed. Soldiers froze in trenches, their hands cracking from cold, their uniforms in tatters. Disease spread. Morale collapsed. By February 1943, the Sixth Army, once of Germany's finest, was shattered. Its commander, General Paulus, surrendered, defying Hitler's demand to fight to the last man. Stalingrad was a catastrophe, a turning point, a moment when the myth of German invincibility crumbled. Over 700,000 Axis troops were killed, wounded, or captured. The Soviet Union seized the initiative, pushing westward, determined to drive the invaders back to Berlin. The tide of the war had turned, and Germany would never regain its momentum. As defeats mounted on the Eastern Front, the war began to bleed into German cities. The Allied bombing campaign intensified, targeting factories, railways, and military installations. Soon entire cities became targets. Hamburg burned in a firestorm that consumed tens of thousands of lives. Cologne, Dresden, Berlin, once centers of culture, were reduced to smoldering ruins. Families slept in bomb shelters, unsure if their homes would still stand by morning. The Nazi regime responded with propaganda, declaring every bombing a sign of enemy desperation. But the truth seeped through the rubble. Supplies grew scarce, food was rationed, blackouts became routine. Children were evacuated to the countryside. Millions of women were pushed into the workforce as men died on faraway battlefields. Yet despite the physical destruction, dissent remained dangerous. The Gestapo crushed resistance ruthlessly. Movements like the White Rose, a group of university students distributing anti-Nazi leaflets, were discovered and executed. Fear kept most Germans silent, even as the regime steered the nation toward ruin. And still, Hitler refused to consider peace. He demanded total war. Joseph Goebbels echoed the call in a fiery speech in Berlin, shouting, "Do you want total war?" The crowd roared back, though their voices masked growing despair. Meanwhile, on the Eastern Front, Soviet forces advanced relentlessly. In the West, British and American troops prepared for a monumental return to the continent. Germany was being squeezed from two sides. Its cities were burning. Its armies were bleeding. Its time was running out. On June 6, 1944, the Allies launched Operation Overlord, the largest amphibious invasion in history. Along the coast of Normandy, thousands of ships, aircraft, and soldiers crossed the English Channel under the cover of darkness. German commanders had anticipated an invasion, but they were uncertain where it would strike. Hitler believed the main attack would come at Pas-de-Calais. The deception worked. When Allied troops stormed the beaches of Normandy, Utah, Omaha, Gold, Juno, and Sword, German defenses were strong, but scattered and uncoordinated. The landings were brutal. Machine gun fire tore through the morning fog. Waves stained red with blood. Soldiers fought through mines, barbed wire, and fortified bunkers. But hour by hour the beachheads held. Reinforcements arrived. Allied forces pushed inland, fighting through hedgerows and villages in a slow, grinding struggle. By late summer, Paris was liberated. By autumn, Allied troops were approaching Germany's western borders. The only mighty Reich was being squeezed in a tightening vice. Hitler, increasingly detached from reality, ordered counterattacks with forces he no longer had. In December 1944, he launched the Ardennes Offensive, the Battle of the Bulge, in a desperate attempt to split the Allied armies. Though initially successful, the offensive collapsed as Germany ran out of fuel, manpower, and time. Meanwhile, in the east, the Red Army prepared for its final push. Soviet forces outnumbered the Germans overwhelmingly. Their advance was relentless, fueled by vengeance for millions of fallen compatriots. Germany was cornered. Its fate was sealed. The final act of the Third Reich was about to begin. By early 1945, the Eastern Front had become a nightmare for German soldiers. What had once been a bold and confident invasion had transformed into a chaotic retreat. The Red Army, equipped with superior numbers, vast resources, and unstoppable momentum, surged westward like a tidal wave. City after city fell. Villages were reduced to ashes. German defenses disintegrated under overwhelming firepower. The Soviets were driven not only by military duty, but also by vengeance. They had witnessed atrocities committed by occupying German forces, mass executions, burned homes, starvation, and destruction. Now the retribution returned with equal fury. In East Prussia, Pomerania, and Silesia, civilian populations fled in terror as Soviet forces advanced. The once proud Wehrmacht was a shadow of its former self, short on fuel, ammunition, and hope. Teenagers and old men were conscripted into the Volkssturm, a desperate militia holding rifles older than themselves. Hitler, refusing to face reality, issued orders from his bunker as if commanding armies that no longer existed. He moved imaginary divisions across maps, demanding counterattacks from units already destroyed. His delusions deepened, and those around him were too afraid to challenge his fantasies. By January, Soviet troops launched the Vistula-Oder offensive, advancing hundreds of kilometers in a matter of weeks. They reached the Oder River, barely 70 kilometers from Berlin itself. The heart of the Third Reich was exposed. The end was no longer a question. It was a countdown. Beneath the ruined streets of Berlin, Hitler retreated into the Führer bunker, a concrete labyrinth buried deep beneath the Reich Chancellery. Here, cut off from the world, he spent his final weeks surrounded by loyal aides, military officers, and secretaries who watched him unravel day by day. Above ground, Berlin was a wasteland. Soviet artillery rained down without pause. Flames rose from shattered buildings. Civilians scavenged for food in the rubble. The once grand capital of Germany had become a city of ghosts. Inside the bunker, Hitler raged at his generals, accusing them of betrayal. His hands trembled from illness. His voice cracked with frustration. He issued impossible orders to divisions that had long ceased to exist. Maps on the wall showed a war lost in every direction. As Soviet forces encircled Berlin, Hitler realized there was no escape. He refused to flee. Quote, "I will not leave the capital. I will fall here." End quote. In his final acts, he married Eva Braun in a simple ceremony inside the bunker. He dictated his political testament, blaming Jews, generals, and the German people for their failures. Reality had abandoned him entirely. On April 30th, 1945, with Soviet troops only blocks away, Hitler retreated to his private room with Eva Braun. A gunshot echoed through the bunker. Hitler was dead. Eva took poison beside him. Their bodies were carried up the bunker stairs, doused in fuel, and set aflame in the garden above as Soviet shells exploded nearby. The man who plunged the world into darkness died not with glory or conviction, but with cowardice and delusion. The Third Reich survived him by only a few days. After Hitler's death, the remnants of Nazi leadership scrambled to find a path out of the inevitable collapse. Grand Admiral Karl Donitz, named Hitler's successor, attempted to negotiate partial surrenders with the Western Allies while continuing to fight the Soviets. But there would be no deals, no mercy. The Allies demanded unconditional surrender. City after city capitulated. Soldiers surrendered in droves. Some units continued fighting out of fear or indoctrination, but the war was effectively over. On May 7, 1945, in Reims, Germany, signed an unconditional surrender to the Allies. The next day, May 8th, was celebrated across Europe as Victory in Europe Day, VV Day. Crowds flooded the streets of London, Paris, New York, and Moscow, rejoicing as 6 years of terror and destruction came to an end. Germany lay in ruins, its cities bombed, its economy shattered, millions dead or displaced. But the reckoning was only beginning. The world had witnessed atrocities of unprecedented scale. The liberation of concentration camps revealed horrors few could comprehend: skeletal survivors, mass graves, gas chambers, piles of human ashes. The truth of the Holocaust shocked even hardened soldiers. To bring justice, the Allies convened the Nuremberg trials, where leading Nazis were charged with war crimes, crimes against humanity, and crimes of peace. For the first time in history, global powers held leaders accountable for orchestrating mass murder. Some defendants expressed remorse. Most hid behind excuses. A few remained defiant to the end. The verdicts were clear: death by hanging for many, long prison terms for others. The trials set a precedent for international law, establishing that political leaders could not hide behind their positions to escape justice. The Third Reich was gone, its leaders dead or imprisoned, its ideology disgraced forever. Yet the shadow it cast would linger, serving as a warning for generations to come. When the guns finally fell silent, Europe awoke to devastation unlike anything in recorded history. Germany, once the engine of the continent, now lay broken in body and spirit. Entire cities were flattened. Millions had no homes. Families searched for missing loved ones among the ruins. Roads, bridges, and factories were destroyed. Farmland was scarred by craters and unexploded bombs. The Allied occupation divided Germany into zones: American, British, French, and Soviet. Each power faced the enormous challenge of rebuilding a shattered nation while preventing the resurgence of Nazism. Denazification programs began across the country. Nazi symbols were removed, propaganda was dismantled, and former party members were interrogated or barred from public office. Yet rebuilding Germany was not only a matter of infrastructure. It required reconstructing the moral core of a society manipulated by tyranny. Millions of displaced persons, former prisoners, and refugees wandered the roads of Europe. The Allies worked to reunite families and provide humanitarian relief. The United Nations Relief and Rehabilitation Administration offered food, shelter, and hope to survivors who had lost everything. In the West, the United States launched the Marshall Plan, a massive economic aid program that helped rebuild European economies and stabilize democracies. Factories roared back to life. New housing rose from rubble. West Germany began to transform into a prosperous, modern state. In the East, under Soviet control, a different path emerged. The German Democratic Republic, East Germany, was formed, shaped by communist ideology and overseen by a security apparatus that mirrored aspects of the regime that had just collapsed. Across both German states, memories of the war lingered in every street and every household. Survivors of the Holocaust rebuilt their lives with immense courage, though many could never return to the homes or families they had lost. The world vowed never to forget what had happened. Out of destruction came determination. Out of despair came renewal. Germany's rebirth was slow, painful, and complex, but it carried a promise to never again allow hatred and tyranny to take hold. The Third Reich lasted only 12 years, but its impact reverberates through history with a gravity unmatched by most empires that endured for centuries. Its rise illustrated how fear, economic hardship, and political instability can open the door to extremism. Its fall revealed the catastrophic consequences of unchecked power and ideological fanaticism. The legacy of Nazi Germany is written not only in the ruins of cities and the borders redrawn after the war, but in the moral conscience of humanity. The Holocaust forced the world to confront the darkest depths of cruelty. From its ashes came new principles: human rights, genocide prevention, and the belief that nations must intervene when atrocities unfold. The Nuremberg trials set a lasting precedent that even the most powerful leaders are not above the law. The United Nations, formed in 1945, carried with it a mission shaped by the lessons of the war: to prevent future global conflicts and to uphold the dignity of every human being. The Universal Declaration of Human Rights, adopted in 1948, was a direct response to the crimes of the Nazi regime. Germany itself transformed profoundly. Generations grew up confronting the crimes of their predecessors through education, memorials, and national reflection. Rather than deny its history, modern Germany chose remembrance and responsibility. Today, it stands as an advocate for peace and human rights, shaped by the painful knowledge of what happens when intolerance goes unchallenged. The story of the Third Reich is not merely a narrative of war and dictatorship. It is a cautionary tale, one that demonstrates how fragile civilization can be and how essential vigilance is in preserving freedom. Its lessons endure because the dangers that birthed it, fear, hatred, disinformation, and prejudice, still exist in the world. Remembering the past becomes not just an act of history, but an act of protection. 12 years of tyranny reshaped the world. The memory of those 12 years continues to shape the future.